Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to another session of Economy this week. And in this video, I'm going to cover the economy relevant articles from different newspapers which have appeared from 19th to 25th February 2026. The discussion will be comprehensive, helping you answer the questions in the prelims as well as the mains examination. If you're liking this initiative, do not forget to hit the like button. And if you're yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Before I start with the first very important article, here is the very important announcement. I know a lot of you are preparing for the Civil Services Exams 2027 now. To ace the examination in the first attempt, you need to have a comprehensive coverage of static portion, the correct approach towards current affairs, correct reading material, and sufficient number of prelims as well as mains test series. Once you enroll into our courses, which is available at a price of 19,999 right now, you will get access to all of these. And if you use the code IAS English, you also become eligible for CSE Assure. Those interested in enrolling, there is a link provided in the description of the video. Click on the link, check the details. Let me start the discussion. First important article, the Finance Minister launched National Monetization Pipeline 2.0. Now, what are the important points? Let's understand. The Government of India earlier announced a National Monetization Pipeline, and this was announced for a duration of 4 years. I'm saying this was announced for 4 years, and that was applicable from financial year 2022 to the financial year 25. Now, this particular monetization pipeline has been implemented. The government of India has been able to meet most of the targets that were set up under the model. Now, under the model, what is essentially done? The government of India will identify certain underutilized or unutilized infrastructure projects. It could be in power sector, road sector, right, or port, or right, let's say the airports, etc. So multiple types of infrastructure projects where the government of India has invested money, but these projects either are unutilized or underutilized. And now these particular projects will be identified, and mainly, I'm saying mainly, one model that will be used will be these projects now will be leased out to the private sector. Private sector will be able to utilize the projects or infrastructure, generate returns or generate revenue. But this particular model will ensure that the government of India will be able to earn a certain amount of money. Because when the government, please listen to me carefully, when the government will lease out the asset, there are multiple models, most of it will be leasing out. So once the government will lease out the infrastructure asset, government will be collecting money from the private sector. And this money the government basically now can utilize for development of other infrastructure projects. And as such, the fact of the matter is the government requires to spend a huge amount of money to develop infrastructure in India. For example, already there is a model or project which is being implemented, National Infrastructure Pipeline, NIP. Under National Infrastructure Pipeline, the government of India has proposed more than 7,000 projects, more than 9,000 projects, corrected. And the total amount of investment in these particular projects will be more than 110 lakh crore rupees. Of course, all of it will not come from the center alone, along with the state as well as the private sector. This much amount of investment has been proposed under NIP. Now, what is this particular new model? That is NMP 2.0. What are the important points in the NMP 2.0? The government of India simply says it will be right used for asset monetization, where certain elements that will be considered will be transfer of assets for a limited time period, like I said earlier, will lease out the assets. Second will be divestment of the portion of listed entities to unlock additional capital, and it will also focus on securitization of cash flows or strategic commercial auctions. So these are the different models that the government of India now has proposed under NMP 2.0 to generate, to basically get around 16.72 lakh crore rupees. 16.72 lakh crore rupees under the NMP 2.0, which will be implemented for a duration of 5 years. It will be implemented for a duration of 5 years, that is financial year 26 to financial year 30. So these are the important points. In addition to this, once the money will be generated, 16 lakh crore rupees, which entity or which stakeholder will get the maximum amount of money? According to the proposal that has been put forward by the government now, which has been formulated or developed by Niti Aayog. This has been developed by Niti Aayog. A lot of the money, that is more than 40% of the money that will be raised through the National Monetization Pipeline 2.0 will be accumulating in the Consolidated Fund of India. More than 40%, around 43%. In addition to this, the PSUs will also get certain amount of money. The State Consolidated Fund will also get certain amount of money, and the direct investment that will be done by the private sector is also accounted under this particular model. Right? So these are certain important points. Now, when I say the assets will be used here, in what way the assets will be used? In what way the assets will be given to the private sector for utilization purposes? One very famous model that has been used earlier by the government, which will be further used by the government, is the model of InvIT, Infrastructure Investment Trust. Under InvIT model, the assets will be monetized. In addition to this, there are also multiple types of public-private partnerships, PPP models, that can be leveraged to lease out the assets to the private sector and generate or ensure that certain amount of money will be flowing to the government by leasing out the assets. So these are certain very important points in the context of national monetization pipeline. Now, based on this, here is a question. Let's solve it. Consider the following statements regarding NMP 2.0. NMP 2.0 has been developed by Niti Aayog. Yes, that is true, by the way. It will be implemented over the 5-year period from financial year 2026 to financial year 2030. Yes, that is also true. The largest portion of the proceeds under NMP 2.0 shall accrue to the Consolidated Fund of India. I've already told you this. 43% of the total funds under this, that is the total target is 16 plus lakh crore rupees, 43% will go to the Consolidated Fund of India. In addition to this, the PSUs, the state government, they will get 5%, 15%, etc. But the maximum portion will go to the central government. Right? So third statement is true. All the three statements are correct. Right option for the question will be right option C here. Let's go forward. Next important article, RBI issues liberalized ECB rules. Now, what are the important points here? This particular proposal was put forward by Reserve Bank of India last year, and finally, RBI has notified new ECB rules. First and foremost, what is ECB? ECB stands for External Commercial Borrowing. External Commercial Borrowing. Under this particular route, the Indian entities in India, companies in India which are operating, which can easily attract FDI. That is essentially these are working in an industry where FDI is allowed. Now these entities can go to the foreign market and borrow from the foreign market. They can take a loan, they can issue debt instruments, etc. So they can borrow from the foreign market. This particular route is called as external commercial borrowing. Now, why this particular route? Now, why there are, let's say, a lot of changes or liberalization has been done by RBI. Look at the current context in India. In the current context, there are certain very important things that you should know of. Point number one. For the fourth consecutive month, the net FDI in India has remained negative, which means overall under FDI, there is outflow of money. That is the first point. Second very important point, Indian rupee has been experiencing depreciation against the dollar. And this is nothing new. For the last couple of years, the Indian rupee has been depreciating. But the problem currently is the level of depreciation. Indian rupee has been hitting historical lows against the USA dollar. So that is the second very important concern. Third very important concern is regarding the foreign portfolio investments, FPIs, FIIs. They have also started taking out huge amount of money outside India's market. So there are multiple issues that are taking place right now, which is not only having an impact on the capital market, or let's say the financial market, but at the same point of time, it is also hurting the forex market. It is having an influence in the forex market, leading to depreciation of Indian rupee. Now, when you look at all of this, one of the ways to arrest this particular depreciation, one of the ways, because there are multiple ways which are used by Reserve Bank of India. One of the ways to arrest this particular decline of Indian rupee against the dollar is by attracting more and more inflow of dollars, bringing in more and more inflows of dollars. And one way that the Reserve Bank of India now is going to achieve this is by liberalizing the ECB rules. Liberalizing ECB rules. Now, what are the new, right, let's say actions, or let's say reforms that have been announced by the Reserve Bank of India under the ECB? Point number one. Until now, under ECB, you were allowed to bring in $750 million a year. $750 million. Now, the Reserve Bank of India simply says, no, we will enhance it to $1 billion or 300% of your net worth. Is the point clear? I'll repeat it again. From 750 million, now it has been changed $1 billion or 300% of the net worth of the company, whichever is larger, whichever is greater. So there is more flexibility now. You can borrow more amount of money. That is the first one. Second one, from whom you can borrow and who can borrow. Simple. The kind of borrowers and the kind of lenders, that particular list has been expanded or widened. Right? The list has been expanded or widened. That will essentially help the borrowers to borrow from different sources from the external market. Second very important change. Third very important change. If you are an entity which is under the corporate insolvency resolution process, CIRP, if you are an entity which is under the corporate insolvency resolution process, now you have been allowed to use the external commercial borrowings if you want to borrow from external market. Which means even though you are under the CIRP, you can borrow from the external market. Third very important reform. And the fourth and a larger reform or bigger reform which will have a larger impact is there is a deregulation in terms of interest rates. Now there is a deregulation in terms of interest rates. What do I mean by that? Until now, the Reserve Bank of India used to impose a cap or a ceiling on the rate of interest that the borrower, that is the Indian company, would offer when they borrow from external routes. The route, or basically the rate of interest that was capped, was 450 basis points above and over a standard rate. For example, let's say LIBOR is a standard rate. Whatever is the LIBOR rate plus 4.5%. That will be the maximum rate of interest that you are allowed to provide when you borrow under this particular route. But there's a problem with this. What is the problem? The problem is, if you are a very large company, very reputed company, right, now you are easily able to borrow by offering this kind of a rate of interest. But the problem is, if you are a medium-sized entity, lot of foreign lenders will not be willing to provide you the loan at this rate of interest. So what has RBI done? RBI now has liberalized this route, which means the rate of interest that you are offering is determined by the market forces of supply and demand, not by this particular cap or ceiling. This particular announcement has been done by Reserve Bank of India. The interest rates have been deregulated. Now. So these are some of the very important changes under the liberalized rules that have been announced by RBI in the context of external commercial borrowing. Now, based on this discussion, let's solve an MCQ. Consider the following statements regarding external commercial borrowings. The maximum limit under this is $750 million. Incorrect. It is now $1 billion or 300% of your net worth, whichever is greater. The entities under the CIRP, Corporate Insolvency Resolution Process, are barred from borrowing under this route? No, they are allowed to borrow under this route now. The borrowings under this has to be done only in dollars? No. The value is given in dollars because dollar is a universal currency. But does it mean I'll have to borrow only in the form of dollars? No. Freely convertible currencies. In fact, if you want to borrow under the ECB route using rupee, right, that is rupee denominated borrowings, yes, for example, the masala bonds are covered under the concept of an ECB itself. So third statement is incorrect. All the three are incorrect. Right option for the question will be option D, none of the above. Now let's go forward. India-France amend tax treaty, remove MFN clause. Now what are the important points? Listen to me very carefully. Listen to me very carefully. India and France very recently have agreed to amend the Double Taxation Avoidance Convention. The Double Taxation Avoidance Convention. And this has rattled, this has created certain concerns regarding the foreign investors, especially the investors from France who have invested in India. What is the basic idea? There is this kind of an investment route called as participatory note, P note or participatory note. What is the basic model? A foreign investor, if they want to invest in India, they will have to go through, right, SEBI approval. That is, they will have to take the SEBI approval first and then they are allowed to invest. But taking SEBI approval is a time-consuming process. It is, right, a very, very lengthy process. So, is there any other route that the investors can use without taking registration? Can they invest in India? Yes, there is a route called as a participatory note. The foreign investor, I'll write it as FI, foreign investor, will approach a foreign institutional investor who is already registered with the SEBI, which is already registered with SEBI. Now, they will transfer the investment, they will give the money to the FII, and in return, the FII will give instrument which is called as a P note, participatory note. Now, this money will be taken by FII, invested in the Indian stock market. This will be invested in India's financial market. So, essentially, this particular route where the foreign investor without registering with SEBI, is able to invest in the India's market is called as a P note route, participatory note route. Now, this is point number one. Point number two, what is the connection to France, the DTAC, India and P note? Let me explain. The double taxation avoidance conventions, basically agreements, will provide tax certainty. They will provide tax certainty. That is, one of the two entities who are signatory to this, they will agree to impose a taxation whenever there is an income generated between these two countries. In some cases, India will agree to impose taxes. In certain other cases, right, France will agree to impose the taxes. That is basically the idea for double taxation avoidance convention. It will ensure that both the countries are not imposing a tax on the same income. Only one of them is going to impose a tax. This will create certainty. This will help inflow of investments. Now, what is the connection to India and France here? I'll just take you back to 2017. Back in the year 2017, India and Mauritius amended their double taxation avoidance agreement. In fact, this was there in the newspaper very recently in the context of the Tiger Global case. Now, once in 2017, this amendment was done, the power to impose capital gains tax was now given to Government of India. Now, the tax officials in India started imposing a tax on the capital gains on the investments which are done from Mauritius in India. And because this particular benefit in the sense, earlier Mauritius used to impose the tax and it was zero. So now the investors realize that if they route their investment from Mauritius into India, the capital gains tax now will be imposed and collected by the government of India. So the tax benefit which was there earlier, they lost it. So more and more investments now started being routed through France. Simple. More and more investments now were started, right, to be routed through France. For example, investment through P note. Investments through P notes were done. A lot of these investments were done in India. Right? This is basically the idea. And why are they being done? France, under the Double Taxation Avoidance Convention, will be imposing the capital gains and collecting. And because the tax rate is negligible there, investors will get lot of tax benefits. Now come to the present. India and France have agreed to amend the protocol for the Double Taxation Avoidance Convention. And according to this new amendment, India will now have the power to impose the capital gains tax. India will have the right to impose the capital gains tax on the investments coming from France into India. And government of India is not going to give 0% tax benefit here. They will impose a 10% capital gains tax. With this, the tax benefit that the French investors or the investments from the France which were being enjoyed, now that will be nullified. And that is expected to hurt a lot of investments in the form of a P note or foreign portfolio investments which are coming from France into India. This is the first very important change. Second very important change is the protocol deletes MFN clause, most favored nation clause, which is existing under Article 7 of the treaty as well as the protocol itself. That is basically the agreement has been signed back in the 1992 between India and France. The problem here is there is a provision associated with the most favored nation. And whenever the provision is there, the Supreme Court guideline simply says or ruling simply says the government of India will have to notify if there is a MFN extension to be provided. The Supreme Court order simply says the government of India has to notify this particular convention or agreement. Otherwise, the benefits automatically will not get extended when government of India will provide similar benefit to somebody else. But this is going to create a lot of confusion. In fact, multiple instances, Supreme Court of India has stuck down or basically ruled against foreign companies because they assumed that because MFN clause is there in the agreement, automatically they are getting benefits. Supreme Court says, no, automatically you will not get the benefit. Government of India has to notify this under section 90 of the Act. So Government of India now says, under the new protocol, we are going to remove the MFN clause itself so that there is no confusion. So that again, Supreme Court of India will not interpret this in another way, etc. That is the second very important change. Third very important change, what if foreign, that is the French companies are investing in India? They are earning certain profits, that is Indian companies are earning profits and dividends are given to the French companies. How the taxation will be imposed? Now, the government of India simply says the tax on the dividends will be imposed in two different ways. Earlier, a flat rate was announced. Now, the system has been changed. If the French company holding is at least 10% in the Indian company, now the tax rate on the dividends will be reduced from 10% to 5%. If the French company holds less than 10%, that is up to 10%, then the dividend tax will be increased from 10% to 15%. So these are certain very important announcements in the context of the DTAC between India and France. Based on this, let's solve the question here. Consider the following statements regarding India-France Double Taxation Avoidance Convention. It was signed in 1992. Yes. The MFN clause has been deleted from the treaty now. Yes. According to the latest convention or the amendment. Yes. Both of the statements are true. Right option will be option C, both. Now let's go forward. India and Brazil have signed multiple agreements, multiple pacts. This has been made possible because the president of Brazil, right, Lula da Silva, visited India very recently. So, what are the important agreements which have been signed? These are the important ones. Focus. And before I start discussing this agreement, listen to me carefully. A lot of you are in a habit of writing down whatever points are there on the slide. Don't write it down. After the session is uploaded on the YouTube, there will be a link provided to you in the description part of the video. Click on the link, download the PPT as well as the notes on the topics I'm discussing here. Let's start. India and Brazil, what are the important pacts or the agreements which have been signed? Or at least there is an agreement arrived at. First one, India has signed agreements to cooperate in critical minerals, rare earth, steel mining with Brazil. Brazil is one of the very important countries in terms of raw materials or the inputs required to produce steel. And not just this, it is also very important in the context of the critical minerals. India in recent times has been signing these kind of agreements, and in addition to this, implementing multiple reforms in the domestic market itself, so that one, it will diversify the countries or the, right, let's say the markets from which it is sourcing the raw material, and second, the import dependence on China will automatically come down. So with that objective, this particular agreement has been signed. First one. Second one, the bilateral trade that is existing between two countries, which is around $15 billion now. The government of India as well as Brazil have accepted that we should increase the value of the bilateral trade that is happening right now. It is estimated, like I said earlier, it is around $15 billion, and by 2030, our target is to increase it to more than $20 billion. In fact, in the speech also, the leaders have basically stated that there's a potential to even hit $30 billion. So that is one more very important provision, or one more very important area where agreement has been arrived. Third one, both the sides have launched a joint declaration and action plan on digital partnership for future. Fourth one, both countries have also been attempting to increase the cooperation for biofuel alliance, especially after USA has withdrawn. USA is right basically against the idea of climate protection now. There is a need to focus on this idea of a biofuel alliance. And the problem with this is it was actually promoted, the idea of a biofuel alliance was actually initiated, promoted by USA earlier. Now, argument is with USA taking multiple steps, multiple measures, right, which is against, right, let's say the climate convention or the idea of a climate change, etc. The government of India and Brazil basically now want to work on biofuel alliance. And finally, the business visa holders. Earlier, the business visa holders, the tenure was 5 years. Now, this has been extended from 5 years to 10 years. Right. So, with this extension, it will promote basically, right, the longer stay, easier visits, right. It will promote ease of doing business. So, these are some of the very important initiatives which have been agreed upon by both the sides in the recent visit by the president of Brazil to India. Now, let me go forward. Next important article, Supreme Court criticizes the state over freebie culture. That particular discussion, that is the Supreme Court raising concerns regarding the freebie culture. To be very precise, the concern regarding the freebies given by the states is nothing new in India. Supreme Court raising a concern is a new thing, but earlier, the Comptroller Auditor General very repeatedly has raised a concern associated with freebie culture. The Finance Commission, the 15th Finance Commission and now 16th Finance Commission has raised a concern regarding the freebie culture, that is basically the fiscal profligacy measures used by the government. And not to forget, even Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India every now and then will come out with a report which talks about the debt of the states. It also has been raising concern regarding the rising debt because freebie culture is used by multiple states where expenditure is very high. Now, what is the context here? Context is more important. The context in this particular case is the Tamil Nadu government has filed a litigation or has filed an application against Section or Rule 23, not Section, Rule 23 of Electricity Amendment Act of 2024. Rule 23 of Electricity Amendment Act of 2024. What is this Rule 23? That is a focus here. Supreme Court basically asking the states, right, these kind of questions such as from where will you get the money if you continue to provide freebies? Give me a clarification. This is one of the areas that the Supreme Court of India has touched upon in the hearing. It has also asked the states, why are we not imposing differential pricing when we supply, let's say, electricity, such as the products or services such as electricity to affluent people, the affluent consumers, let's charge more on them, and poorer sections, let's charge lesser on them. So multiple questions have been raised by the Supreme Court of India regarding, right, let's say the freebies which are given by the states. But all of this has arisen because of Rule 23 of Electricity Act. What is the issue? The Rule 23 of Electricity Amendment Act basically talks about bridging the gap between the average revenue realized and average cost of supply. I'll repeat the full forms again. Average revenue realized and average cost of supply. Generally, when you talk about the state-owned distribution companies, the state discoms, one of the very common features is these particular discoms incur huge amount of losses, despite the government of India implementing multiple reforms. For example, government earlier, that is the government of India by the way, implemented the Uday scheme, Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. After that, there was one more revamped distribution sector scheme, etc. Despite implementing these reforms, it has been seen that the financial health of lot of discoms is still very weak. A lot of discoms are incurring losses. So Supreme Court of India now is simply asking this question. Why is that there is a gap between ARR and ACS? And this is because, again, I'm going back to Rule 23. What does the Rule 23 simply say? If there is a gap between ARR and ACS, this gap should be eliminated. If you can't eliminate, then tell me what are the ways you will be bridging this particular gap. Meaning what? If the distribution company, discom, state-owned discom, is selling electricity and getting money back, that is average revenue realized. But what is the total expenditure incurred by this particular discom to distribute 1 unit of electricity? So the expenditure incurred is greater, revenue realized is smaller. This is actually leading to losses being incurred by the distribution companies. And the problem arises because there is a lot of interference of the government when you need to fix the tariff, when you need to fix the electricity tariff. So the Rule 23 basically spoke about eliminating the gap between both of them. The Tamil Nadu government went to Supreme Court of India and raised validity of Rule 23. Now the Supreme Court of India has asked question to the governments. Why are we giving freebies to the people? That is, if you want to bridge this particular gap, you can do it by increasing the tariff when you supply electricity to the rich households. Simple. Increase the tariff when you supply to the rich household, affluent section of the society. That will help you raise revenues. That might even help you earn profits. But rather than doing this, the states are involved in providing freebies to the people. That is pushing the finances of the states into a dangerous territory. Many of the states have now unsustainable debt. Many of the states have very high interest liabilities that they need to pay every year. Many of the states have to cut down their capital expenditure, which is a necessity, by providing more of welfare expenditure, etc. So these are some of the questions or the issues that have been raised by the Supreme Court of India in the context of challenge against Rule 23 of Electricity Act. Now let's go forward. Next article. RBI Secured Data Center. RBI now has built the second secured data center. What is the importance of this? Listen to me carefully. Whenever you talk about, let's say, Reserve Bank of India, RBI will provide lot of services. It is basically ensuring that the financial market at large is working without any interruptions. Right? For example, RBI will provide services such as, let's say, transfer of funds. RBI will ensure participants are there in the financial market. RBI will also oversee the payment and settlement systems, etc. Core banking solutions are being implemented. And these are very, very important systems, right? In order to ensure that the financial market is operating, financial market is stable, etc. Now, RBI has already developed a data center, right? It already has one data center which is located in Navi Mumbai. But what if, hypothetically, what if there is, let's say, an earthquake? What if there is a war? And at that point of time, and generally what happens whenever there is a war with another country, they will try to target important facilities, important infrastructures. So, what if this kind of a situation arises? It is always better to have one more data center where all of this data, important sensitive technologies, all the backup systems are located. And that is exactly what has been done by Reserve Bank of India now. It has designed, this particular facility, the second facility, to have core computing systems to support central bank's currency management, payment and settlement operations, and regulatory data functions. So this is the second center that has been developed by Reserve Bank of India, and this is basically located in Odisha. Remember, it is located in Odisha. Right, so these are the important articles, the concepts, as well as the questions associated with the economy related articles which have appeared in different newspapers from 19th to 25th February 2026. If you have liked the discussion, do not forget to hit the like button. If you are yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. And one more reminder, do not worry about the PPT as well as the notes. Please look at the link which is provided in the description part of the video. Download both of them, but more importantly, use these for revision purposes. That's it from my side in today's session. See you again next week. Till then, take care.